perfection, given monetary and budgetary limitations. And there's also a yearning idealism which exists in many cultures, but I often quintessentially associate with Germanic forms of art and with the German sensibility, without which north, south, east or west, there can't really be a centre. It's not that we're all Germans really, although English people are primarily Germanic, but nevertheless it's that they're the core to the European identity, which can have many outer chambers, but without the core doesn't exist. And this is why despite the fact that we technically fought against them savagely 12 times in the 20th century, that is actually less important, in my view, than the spiritual damage which has been done to Germany since the Second World War. And the degradation of Germany and of things German in casual British parliaments, and American as well, and much more subtly and culturally than that. At every level, from the mass cultural levels and sort of graphic novels to modernist opera and back again, every level there has been this sort of attitude of not just cynicism or disrespect, but deconstruction, and willed and vigorous and sort of emotionally violent deconstruction at that. And unless contemporary European people can, in the next years that face us, step over that, there will be a hole right in the heart of the European identity, right in the whole of the Caucasian identity, because our identity without German culture is essentially unthinkable. Without its art, without its literature, without its music, without its philosophy, without its, at times, to the English spirit, ponderous seriousness, without its fanatical attitude towards ideas, that streak of virulence that's part of the Germanic nature, and in which now they've been taught to be afraid. And Syberberg's work is an artistic attempt to wrestle with what it is to be German, which, if you think about it, being a German artist or any sort of creator who's not making schlock television just to sort of shift butter mountains, but he's actually trying to articulate a vision of life. There's no nationality in Europe, even in Russia under communism, that is more difficult to do, or to bring off, or even to deal with, than the German identity. Because even the Bolshevik Revolution didn't so disprivilege the very idea of what it was to be Slavic or Russian. From the inside out, it destroyed and burned and blew up churches and destroyed artworks. I think every musician that Shostakovich was at the Moscow Conservatoire with in one particular year was shot. Everyone. On Stalin's orders. And when he asked through party officials, because you had to be a member of the party, of course, why he'd been spared, Stalin said, Shostakovich can write film music. We need film music. Because we need film. Because with film we can go straight into the minds of the masses. There's a Polish novel called The Engineer of Human Souls. And that was a Stalinist term. We are the engineers of human souls. And we need men who can write the music for the films where we can go straight into the brains of the masses. Because with film you can go straight into the front cortex, you go straight, because as visualization does. Before you hear the sound, before you hear the music, you see the image. And the image has gone straight into the mind. That's why it is the form of the 20th century. It's where representational art has gone in the 20th century. It's why radical governments have used it in every way. It's why the Chinese use film extensively with the masses. It's why, but also, of course, in all other cultures, India as well, now coming up economically. In the United States, the whole dream factory has been created since basically consolidation of the Hollywood studios as an industry perforce in around 1919, prior to the creation by some of the artists, like D.W. Griffith of United Artists. It's interesting, just as a sideline in American cinema, to think of what's happened to D.W. Griffith. Films like Intolerance, and above all, Birth of a Nation, Parts 1 and 2. The Golden Globe Awards and certain Hollywood awards, up until the early 1990s, used to have a D.W. Griffith Prize. Of course, for those who don't know, in Birth of a Nation, the clan are the heroes. Not a film that will be made today. And in the early 1990s, certain black nationalists complained, and the D.W. Griffith Prize, they didn't get rid of it at all because he's crucial to the development of world cinema, with Lillian Gish in his major films and this sort of thing. So it's, you know, the Shakespeare of American cinema, it's a bit difficult to completely put him in the closet, but by this date in time, 10, 15 years further on, the D.W. Griffith Prize is no longer awarded. And that's sort of Hollywood cinema, which over time and at certain times has had certain genuine European features, and yet over time also has changed to the degree that the amount of European sensibility that's left in contemporary Hollywood is very small. The amount that was there in 1920, correspondingly, was quite significant. Indeed, there's always been many Hollywoods, and as Gibson discovered with his film, if you make $500 million in personal profit, criticism dries up. John Wayne opposed racial desegregation. He gave money openly to the Klan in the 1960s. He was such a big star, he was left alone because he was a big brand, and you know, you want them. But there's a degree to which the sensibility that he represented, they just made sure it didn't appear on the screen too much. That's how it's done. And Syberberg is not a right-wing in my view. He's a conservative nationalist of a mild sort, but he's an aesthetic German. And his real premise is that Germany is in all of us. And without its cultural inheritance as something to use and step beyond, we cannot have a coherent Europeanness. And without that trajectory, it is not possible to survive. So I would ask you, next time you've got an hour or so on the internet, to put Hans-Jürgen Syberberg into Google or one of the other search engines, bring up what you can and see what you make of him. Because he's somebody who is obscure, but he's obscure not because he's no good, and not because he needs to be obscure or has been falsely kept so, but because he's slightly dangerous. And in this era of standardization and of dumbing down and of conformity, there is a great need for those who are prepared to stand up for the inner lives of their own peoples. And he's still alive. Thank you very much.